When William Goldman graduated in the class of 1952, he sat where you're sitting and heard an address by another former Oberlin student, Thornton Wilder, whose theme was wrestling with Henry David Thoreau. Well, William Goldman has spent 30 years wrestling with the complexities of life in post-war America, and through several different media and with signal success. Over a dozen novels, several Writers Guild Awards, a children's book, numerous screenplays, Harper, 1966, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, All the President's Men, the latter two receiving Academy Awards. Oberlin College is in William Goldman's blood. 3 novels of his are partially set here: Boys and Girls Together, Control, The Color of Light, came out last year. He returned this past December, sentimental return. He came to the creative writing program. There was held a mini festival, film festival of Bill Goldman films. And he's been helping prepare our next generation of writers to leave this green square and wrestle with their world. It's an honor to welcome William Goldman.
I realize that the graduating seniors are the stars today, and I'll get to you eventually, but in the tradition of American writers such as Walt Whitman, I would like to sing about myself for a little while, because this has been a remarkable period for me. First the Nobel Prize for Literature, and now this. William Golding, the English novelist and actual winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature, author of Lord of the Flies, first began to take over my life in 1959. A friend of mine was teaching adult school courses in central New Jersey, one of them a class in creative writing. He got the flu one wintry night and asked if I would substitute. I agreed, and after many hours of getting lost, finally found the right place, walked in and said to the gathering of mostly housewives that their regular teacher was ill and I was the replacement. A very fat man sitting in the front row said, "Wow, Lord of the Flies." I wanted to yell at him that William Golding was far too talented to have to teach adult school and much too wise to ever visit central New Jersey in the wintertime. But of course I said nothing, contenting myself with the secure knowledge that this lone fat figure was surely the greatest boob to ever walk the earth. I was, alas, wrong. There are many Goldingites, and their audacity is increasing. Many times a year I am approached by someone who says, "I'm a really big fan of yours," and while I am demurely and self-deprecatingly thanking them, they finish me off thusly, especially Lord of the Flies. You might well be thinking at this moment that mine is not such a terrible cross, and you might well be right. But I am inside my own skin, so please consider this. My novel of last year, The Color of Light, has been published in softcover this very month of May. A recent announcement in American Booksellers magazine reconfirmed that fact. The Color of Light, it said, would indeed come out in May, and according to the announcement, The Color of Light was written by William Golding. When I saw the magazine, I snapped. I mean, when your own publisher doesn't know your name and thinks you're a 75-year-old Englishman, it's time to take a stand, which is what I'm doing. From now on, I intend to accept all praise for Lord of the Flies. I'll also be in the lobby of the Oberlin Inn after this is over, handing out Xerox copies of my Nobel Prize acceptance speech. If you'd like, I'll be glad to autograph it for you. I don't know if anyone here knows William Golding, but if you do, you could do me a big favor by telling him what a fan you are of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And tell him, too, that I'm on his trail. I'm giving the Oberlin Commencement speech. Nothing can stop me now. All right, seniors. You're now aware of who I am, or more accurately, who I am not. But do you know what I am? I will tell you. I am the ultimate hurdle, the final impediment, the concluding obstruction. I am roll of drums, crash of cymbals, the last roadblock between you and capital L life, and I know how much you want me out of the way. I know because an unbelievable, at least for me, third of a century ago, in 1952, I sat where you are, and I heard one of my favorite writers, Thornton Wilder, deliver the commencement address, and it was wonderful. I'm just sure it was. Although I must admit that even though I did hear it, I didn't listen, not to one word, because I wanted out, to be gone, free, and so do you. And in your honor, I will be as brief an obstacle as I can. This speech runs 17 minutes and 10 seconds. 4 minutes and 30 seconds are now gone. 12 minutes plus is all you have to suffer through. How to fill those 12 minutes, though? What to talk about that's worth your time? I think the answer is obvious. What we must talk about is the future of the world, along with your part in it, and along with that, how you can fix the mess we've given you. And along about now, your eyes should be starting to glaze over. Were they? I hope so, because at least that shows you were listening. No, let's leave the future of the world alone for today and talk instead about the problems facing America. And do you know what goes through my head when I hear that phrase, the problems facing America? Boring. Shall we discuss, in the words of Amy Carter, possibly the leading philosopher of her time, nuclear proliferation? Snooze, say I. Well, what then? What to talk about in the 10 minutes and 45 seconds left of this? I mention time again, and I will often, because if these ramblings have a subtext, it is that. Time. Your time. An original thought. I have had very few, but one of them is this. The trouble with books is that they are all written by writers. Meaning? Well, meaning this. I believe that there are such things as occupational generalities. For example, no matter how much your dentist may tell you that he really is merciful, no matter how loudly he proclaims that he is tender and loving, I will now and forever cling to the absolute belief, and I speak as the author of the book and movie of Marathon Man, that all dentists are sadists. I mean, it has to be somewhere in their makeup. All they do from dawn to dusk is make us shriek and squirm. Don't tell me tender and loving and merciful. There's a point to this, please believe me. And writers, we are all, I think, tarred with Graham Greene's glorious phrase, an unhappy childhood is a writer's goldmine. I believe that writers do what they do in an attempt to balance the teeter-totter on the playground. I think we do what we do as an act of revenge. And I wish that someone with unlimited resources, say the United States government or the Ford Foundation or Michael Jackson, would go to perhaps 100 people in the country and say to them, look, here's the deal. We'll give you enough money so you can live exactly the way you've been living for 1 year. And all you have to do is fill up 250 pages with words. All of this to be done totally anonymously. No one will ever know if you write one word over and over, or sonnets, or stories, or epic poems. What do you think those 100 people would write? I certainly don't know, but I suspect very strongly it would not be what we writers put down. And what does this have to do with us in the 8 minutes and 50 seconds remaining? Just this. I am your commencement speaker. And the trouble with all such animals is we are, every one of us, at least in the eyes of the world, quote-unquote successes. We have all somehow stumbled through the maze, and so we stand triumphantly in front of you, not talking about our luck or our scars, ignoring our mistakes, our inability to love or love enough, our incapacity for friendship, hiding the murderous competitive side of our nature, and we fill your ears with the most extraordinary phrases. Ah, yes, we proclaim, youth, how lucky you are. Truly, we tell you, the future shineth. Believe us, we swear, if you all work hard enough, secret meaning, if you work as hard as I did, if you just put your young, pure shoulders to the wheel, we will banish war, end starvation, elevate goodness. Of course, you understand, it's all lies. I'm not at all sure you're lucky. I think the future, if it shines at all, is shining less brightly, and I don't know if goodness has ever been much more than a long shot. And I wonder what your commencement speaker would tell you if he or she were picked totally at random and put here anonymously to speak what they wanted and not be stifled by the limitations of us in the eyes of the world, quote-unquote, successes. Would he say, you lucky twerps, I've been a plumber for 20 years while you've been taking basket weaving? Oh, boy, am I going to enjoy watching the bunch of you go down the tubes. Would she say, I have nothing to tell you. You're different from the rest of us. You take drugs and you enjoy sex and you embrace those horrid computers. And may you all just please leave me alone with my embroidery. What do you think those commencement speakers would say? I certainly don't know, but I suspect it would be a lot different from what we tell you, and at least as helpful. Because in reality, what can I possibly say? I believe that all truths are known. Love thy neighbor? Sure. Do unto others? Oh, absolutely. Blessed are the meek? Right. Turn the other cheek? Hey, trust me. Not commit adultery? Are you serious? I went to Oberlin. What then is left for me to tell you? Just this. You are being, as we sit here right this moment, robbed. This has become a world totally involved with winning and losing, and I hate that, because nobody ever truly wins or totally loses. We are obsessed with successes. I think the most significant periodical of today, in the sense that it reflects our era, is People magazine, because it deals only with successes and it's meant to be thrown away, and if that doesn't tell you what success is, nothing will. Do you know what you're being robbed of? I'm now going to say it, a dirty word, a dirty and disappearing 9-letter word, happiness. And I, your speaker, am magnificently qualified to talk to you about it because of one crucial reason. I'm not good at happiness. As proof of that, let me give you a wonderful line my wife Eileen said when she was asked if I was having a good time at some gathering or other. Eileen replied, it's impossible to tell. Bill only enjoys himself in retrospect. What better man to talk to you about happiness? And I don't mean by happiness getting stoned with your friends and giggling over pseudo-profound thoughts. Nothing wrong with that, I suppose. But that's being giddy, not happy. And it's not getting a raise before any of your friends. That's not happiness. That's a small and very fleeting victory. Well, what is happiness? The American College Dictionary defines it as being the quality or state of being happy. A really super definition. And just one of the reasons why all of us are all so crazy about dictionaries. And happy, they say, is characterized by or indicative of pleasure and gladness. Pleasure and gladness. But that's not what Webster says. He tells us happiness is good fortune or luck. Hey, they're in the same business and they can't agree. I think if I went to 50 experts, I'd get 50 different answers, because there is no such thing as a definition of happiness. We each have our own, and we carry it inside us, and probably no luggage we take along in our lives is as valuable, and certainly none is as fragile. I'm going to ask you to do something soon, and it isn't easy. When I say the word, I want you seniors to be silent and think about what I ask you to think about. The thinking will be a breeze. You didn't get to where you are today without that ability, but silence is a bitch. I live with it and in it every working day of my life. I remember once being interviewed by an English reporter, and he said, it must be very hard what you do, the writing and all. And I said, maybe, maybe not, but nobody forced me to be a writer. What's hard is the silence. The silence, he said? Yes, I said. I've been at this for years and years, and the silence is unbearable for me now. That's why I put on music as soon as I get to my office. And quickly, too quickly, he said, "Ah, yes, I see." And quickly I said, "No, I don't think you do. But let's try something. Let's just sit here for 1 minute in dead silence and see how it feels." So we sat there, and in 10 seconds he said, "Oh, I do see what you mean." And I said, "No, you don't. You were only quiet for 10 seconds. I want 60. The most he could last was 15. Which is what I'm going to ask of you seniors, 15 seconds of silence. And what I want you to think about is simply this. In 10 years, who and what and where do you want to be? Not geographically, not financially, but emotionally. Let's be very clear about this. A decade down the line, what person is going to be inside your skin? Think about that future person and what would make that person, the next you, happy. All right, please close your eyes, do it, and think very hard for 15 seconds, starting right now. "15 seconds is a long time, isn't it? All right, why did I ask you to do that? Not because we are beginning some gigantic game of Simon Says, but rather this. In 10 years, some of you are going to be close to where your minds just were, but others of you, a lot of you, maybe most of you, won't be. What to do? I'll give you a suggestion. I was once part of a study undertaken by one of the great American universities, their graduate psychology department more precisely, and what they did was select by random sampling 4 occupations: clerks, electricians, writers, and I can't come up with a 4th. Now they went to union rolls and selected again at random 10 members of each occupation. All of us were and had to be, for purposes of the study, 38 years old. And we were interviewed in depth by doctoral candidates for a solid week, questions ranging over everything. That was the opening part of the study. The second and closing part was to take place when we were all 42, when the same questioners would return and again ask us for a week their myriad questions. And the purpose of all this? 3.5 minutes now when you're free. Again, the purpose? Simply that it had been the common wisdom that when men and women got to be 40, their lives began to smooth. They had fought the rapids, and times were even and sweet for them, now the jolting done. This study challenged that wisdom. This study was based on the belief that 40 was a time of wild upheaval in people's lives. Infidelity, alcoholism, misery, divorce, and you know what? The study was right. It turned out that 40 was a time of horrendous change, and do you know why? Because at 40, men and women are suffering the consequences of decisions made when they were 21 or 2, like most of you seniors are 21 or 2. Decisions, brutal, lifetime decisions, were made by people totally inadequate to make them. Because how in hell can you know what it's like out there when you haven't been out there yet? I don't want you to wait till you're 40 to find out that the road not taken was the one for you. You'll know that in 10 years. So remember what you thought about in our 15 seconds of silence together. And if you're a lifetime away from what you wanted, if there is no happiness inside you, and believe me, you'll know, do something. Don't wait. What? A timid suggestion. Come back here, right here to this oasis in the desert of the world. Come for an hour or a day or whatever it takes, wander around, and do your best to remember who you were and what you were and where you wanted to go and where you veered off. Start over, try it again, pursue happiness, track it down. I don't know what it is, but I know when it isn't. Let me repeat that. I don't know what happiness is, but I know when it isn't, and so will you, and so will you. Final 55 seconds now, my graduation day, glorious sunshine. The 4 or so days each year when the gods of the weather decide, hey, they've suffered enough, give them a dose of springtime. I was in a very emotional mood. I wanted to be a writer, but I knew that was out of the question. I didn't want to go into the Army, but I knew that was an automatic. A friend of mine A dear, sweet, kind friend who had graduated from here the year before came back, and after all the speeches and embraces and farewells, I packed and loaded up the car, and we started driving away. My family and my dear, sweet, kind friend who had graduated the year before. I just couldn't leave. It was so perfect that day, so we circled Tappan Square. And I stared out, so close to tears, and my dear, sweet, kind friend said as we circled, "Look at it, isn't it beautiful?" And I nodded. And then we passed a bunch of underclassmen walking along, and he said, my dear, sweet, kind friend, "Look at them, do you know them?" And I did, so I nodded. And then his voice began to rise, and he said, "Well, they don't want you here anymore. Your history, you're just another boring old alumnus to them. It's their place now. It's theirs, and you can't ever have it back. You don't belong, not now, and you never will again." And on he went in joyous sadism, absolutely destroying me. It took me a while to realize it, but of course he was totally mistaken. Not belong here at Oberlin? Of course I belong here. We all belong here.